Hi, I'm Wes Allen with DM Tales, and today I'm reviewing a product for Basic Fantasy RPG. This is my look at Morgansfort, the Western Lands campaign. Let's roll it. So, Morgansfort, the Western Lands campaign, is a setting for the Basic Fantasy RPG system, which is an old-school hack about Moldvay Cook power levels with some AD&D elements thrown in. It is written by the game's creator, Chris Gonnerman. It comes in at a 71-page perfect bound book, which can be purchased print on demand from Amazon right now for the huge sum of $3.95. But if you don't want to pay Amazon or you want another format, you can purchase the book from Lulu Press for $4.95 as a perfect bound book. Or if you want it to lay flat, you can spend $8.45 in order to get a coil bound book, and that'll lay flat on the table when you're trying to read it. But here's the thing. As with all Basic Fantasy RPG books, the back cover shouts at you, don't buy this book. At least, not yet. This is because Basic Fantasy RPG is not a profit-making organization. It is a project that is designed to make these tools available for free. Chris Gonnerman has said he's not trying to make money off of this thing, and the books that he sells through Amazon are all print on demand, printed basically at cost, or if not exactly at cost, just a tad bit over. Everything that comes out for the game is available on their website as a free download, and you can download the books either as a PDF if you just want to run it as is, or you can get them as an open document format, open it up in LibreOffice, and edit the thing till you are content. The game is designed that way. So if you want to create your own version of Basic Fantasy RPG, you can download the actual source and do it yourself. So the setting for Morgansfort takes place in the far western former colonies of an empire that has fallen. In the wake of its collapse, these colonies have been cut off. There is one small island that is a remnant of that empire, and they call themselves the Empire of the Erd. The person who rules there calls themselves the Emperor, even though it's just one island. The other colonies that are in the region have declared themselves as free cities. One of these, up on the northern continent, has decided that they will remain closely allied with the Empire, and in fact they are a good source of slave labor for the Empire. This is not a nice place. I know there's a lot of push right now for folks in TTRPG spaces to not use enslavement as a hook for adventuring. This is designed to basically say that this is not a nice world. And so it's one of those things where, yeah, you might not be comfortable with it, but it's designed and set up so that you aren't comfortable with it. This is not a good place. The former colony that the players will be based out of is called Stateholm, and that's on the southern continent, that southern landmass in the main map. And this is a much more free and open society. Slavery is illegal here. And the whole setup of the environment is to show the benefits of one and the downfall of the other. The actual base of operations for the players is the eponymous Morgansfort. This is a small bastion of Stateholm's kind of free area sovereignty on that southern continent. It has a little bit of history as given for the original ruler of the area, which was passed on to a son after a raid killed his wife. And so this is a nice backdrop. There's some drama that's built in here. The map is laid out on pages 13 through 16 of the book, and it really gives the feel of the Keep on the Borderlands. It's that type of setting, the far reaches of where we have settled civilized lands at this point on the border of the wilderness. And this is one little bastion where you can hang out, and very much reads and is laid out a lot like that. So for me, there's a nostalgia factor here that makes me appreciate it. And in fact, the very nature of Stateholm and these western lands in the map gives that feeling of the known world from the expert set, from Cook's expert set that I grew up with. So those were the first two maps really that I worked with inside D&D. So looking at them here in Morgansfort, I see the echoes. There's very much an homage to that old set and what it tried to accomplish, and I appreciate that. As I said, on that island of Kovis, there is a remnant of the Empire of Erd. However, even there, it's not a monolith. They are dealing with remnants of the original indigenous population. Some have blended in with the imperial rule, some have held on to their older traditions, and some really want to see an uprising where things can change. So there's some drama there that can be used for adventure hooks in future campaigns should the GM wish to use it. There is also an island of elves out in the middle of the sea. We're a little bit xenophobic. They don't really like a lot of outsiders coming in. They do have some treaties of convenience, but again, these are ideas for future adventure hooks beyond what's included inside the book, and that's really cool. One of the most interesting things about the description of this world of the Western lands is its religion. It is split between older religions, which are called the 100 Gods, and Druids. And it's interesting because Druids are not one of the core classes of basic fantasy RPG. They are treated in this book like they were just regular clerics. Although if you go to Basic Fantasy's website, you can download a supplement that gives you the Druid class, and you can apply that class to this religion inside the campaign. That's kind of cool. The overarching religion inside this whole region was brought in by the Empire. It is called the Church of Ta. And in its description, there's very much an echo of, in Western Christianity, of Roman Catholicism and the splinter groups of Protestantism. There is definitely a bias towards Protestantism inside the description of the two fractions of the same religion, but it does try to highlight that the teachings of the religion aren't necessarily matched by the structure or the institution of the religion. And that, again, offers some interesting insight and character development and maybe role-playing adventure hooks should players want to continue in this world beyond what's in the book. Really interesting. I find it fascinating. There's a lot of parallels in the setting of Western colonization, dealing with indigenous populations and the breakdown of religion, and trying to navigate how people all live together even when we have these different types of faith. Okay, so Morgansfort includes 3 separate adventures that aren't necessarily tied together in a storyline. They are literally distinct entities in and of their own right. This is an older sense of the game. And I don't want to give away too much about each of the adventures in this review because I don't want to ruin it for potential players, but I'll describe them for you. The first is called the Old Island Fortress. This is a fortification on an island in a river, the Old Island Fortress, that predates the colonization of the empire by a huge amount of time. And the adventure takes place in the dungeon ruins underneath the surface of the fortress. It's a really cool place to start players off because it is only 2 levels and it is less than an hour's walk from Morgansfort along a road. And that's really nice because the players can go out, they can explore, they can figure out a way onto the island, and then if things get rough or they need to come back and drop off treasure and recover, they're less than an hour's walk away from civilization and safety where they can relax and recover their hit points and then go back on the delve. That's a really cool way to start players off in an adventure. And I really wish for my basic fantasy campaign that I had done something similar because I had them going off like a day and a half into the wilderness and they kept on having to spend all that time traveling back and forth until we found an abandoned hut about 2/3 the way home. But having it right there, it's just 1 hour, spend a couple days home recovering, go right back in. Very, very well thought out for that. The second of the adventures is called the Nameless Dungeon, and this, for lack of a better term, is really a classic funhouse dungeon. There are plenty of monsters to negotiate with, attack, or avoid. There are plenty of traps there to really make the player's day miserable. There are mysteries to be solved and discovered, some of which are not answered and can be used by a GM to extend the adventure far beyond just the realms of the dungeon itself. It is really cool to set up. It is 3 levels, and it's, by today's standards, it's really large. It's 88 keyed rooms, so it's going to take a party a while to get through this place. Lot of fun, really interesting to look at, and there's some really neat things that I actually want to throw at my players at some point in the future, even if I never run this dungeon, because I just never thought of that before. The last is definitely a nod to the old school B2 Keep on the Borderlands. The dungeon's name is The Cave of the Unknown, which is literally on the map in B2. So there you go. I love these little nods back to the old school. These were the versions of the game I first played. And what's cool about The Cave of the Unknown is that it's a different type of adventure. You have the typical monsters to attack, but you're there on a rescue mission. And the further you get into the rescue mission, the stranger the creatures become, and you discover that you have a hard time limit before things will go completely sideways and your mission will fail. So there's a tension there that doesn't exist in the other two, which is just straight exploration, loot the place, and get home. And I like this. The three adventures offer a good amount of variety and hooks to draw people in, and they give you different versions of gameplay so that GMs can learn how to run these different types of adventures, but also the players can figure out which one they like more. Do they like straight up adventuring, going into the depths of the unknown, or do they want more story plot-driven elements where they've got to go rescue someone before such and such a time, or everything will fail and the world will grow dark and we won't get our reward? Always money in the old school gaming. And I like that they did this, and it's put together really nice, and you have that nice home base, and I just said nice a whole lot, but it's all there for a player to learn how to play this game at low levels while offering some very real challenge. Well done. Now, the basic fantasy RPG books all follow the same basic formatting options, and that is true for Morgansfort as well. Anything that is room description is going to be in the classic standard of the box text, which is going to describe the room. But really, GMs are encouraged to summarize it and provide their own spin on the description of the rooms, because there might be something they're better at describing than others. But it's there to give flavor and to draw players' imaginations into what they're seeing. This is designed for an older school game where you don't have a VTT that's showing every room on the map as players go through. You have to describe it as they walk, and the party's mapping it as they go along. I actually want to run a game like that sometime just to see the difference and to force players to engage their imagination in a different way. I love my VTT. It's been a lot of fun being able to play with folks from all over the world, but man, throwing them into darkness going, we don't know where we are, there's a certain appeal to that as a GM. And one of the cool things that the Basic Fantasy modules does is anytime there is a potentially hostile creature in a room or in an encounter, it is listed, and next to it are empty checkboxes, which correspond to its number of hit points. So especially if the GM is running from a PDF directly, or if they decide they're going to print it out and they don't worry about marking up their copy, you can just check off the boxes when they take damage. You don't have to do any subtraction. It's just check, check, check. When all the checks are filled, that creature goes down. I have not seen that before. I vaguely remember it being described in an older version of the game, but I don't recall seeing it myself. And I love that idea. I think it's a fantastic innovation that I would love to see other products bring out. Just very cool. The one negative that I have about this printing is the same that's true for all these bound adventures, whether it's the Goodman Games Original Adventures Reincarnated or these for Basic Fantasy RPG, or even the OSE modules you can buy from Exalted Funeral. It's that the maps are inside the book. Now, I say that because in old school, the maps used to be the cardboard cover on the outside. They were printed on the inside page, and they were not stapled into the actual book itself. So you could put it out, prop it up, or place it on the table. And as you're reading the key of the rooms, you can actually see where they all exist in the map without having to flip through pages and forget what's going where. And that's a really nice feature. When I was reading the hard print copy of Morgansfort, I had to keep flipping back and forth, and where's that number and where's the next number now, so that I could gain a better mental picture of what was going on, which you need to do as a GM. Where Basic Fantasy has an advantage over some of these other systems, however, is the PDFs are all free. So if I want to download the PDF and print out just the map pages, I can do that. And now I can read the hard copy of the book and just have the paper out there showing me where all the different rooms are. Easily solved, minor quibble, but it's there and it's just something to be aware of that you have to have a workaround for. And maybe you don't mind flipping through pages. I get confused. Morgansfort is a really nice, partially structured sandbox. It is explained to the level where you can actually interact inside the world, but it leaves a lot for the GM to do themselves so they can build up the Western Lands the way they want to build it up. That is fantastic. The adventures are all different. They offer different challenges, and they encourage players to approach their different dungeon crawls or their adventure hooks in different ways. These are all great things for new players and new GMs to learn right off the bat. So for that, if you're just getting started in running a tabletop role-playing game, particularly an old school game like Basic Fantasy RPG, this might be something you want to start with. And the fact that it is free to download or really cheap to buy makes this a no-brainer to pick up. The worst that can happen is you're wasting a little hard drive space until you delete it. I am taking a break after a horrible, stressful couple of years, but I will be back with more reviews coming up. I have gotten the second issue of Carcass Crawler for Old School Essentials, and there's some cool stuff in there that I want to take a look at. I also have a few more of the Old School Adventures Reincarnated from Goodman Games that I really want to take a look at, including two of my favorite of all time, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks and Castle Amber, which is my favorite of all time. I'm looking forward to looking at those with you. So until we encounter each other again, folks, happy playing, everyone.